Alright, welcome back to my boss build series, and I am on Solar Titan today doing a Caiatl checkpoint. This is kind of a throwback to when Duality released. And then, by the way, if you didn't know, Duality is the featured dungeon this week, so if you want to farm it for the exotic sword, Heart Shadow, or any of the good weapons like Storm Chaser, Unforgiven, you can do that this week. And supposedly, I don't know if it's a typo, but Bungie released their little like next week in Destiny blurb. When you log into the game, I saw it yesterday, it said next week the featured dungeon is Duality and the featured raid is Last Wish. So if that is correct, then we're going to have 2 weeks of Duality, like from end of this season going into the first week of next season, and 2 weeks of Last Wish. But why I'm saying this is kind of a throwback to Season of the Haunted and when this released was because when this dungeon released, we had the rework of Solar 3.0. And with Solar 3.0 and the Seasonal Artifact mod, we had this broken ability from Solar to let us survive basically anything, and that was restoration ×2. There was actually a mod in the seasonal artifact that gave you restoration ×2 every time you used your class ability, and it would give you like at least 8 seconds of restoration ×2, which is absolutely nuts because restoration ×1 is already incredibly good. And restoration ×2 was basically twice as good. It would allow you to just survive anything. It made soloing this dungeon fairly easy despite the ad density and despite the dungeon being built around the new subclasses. So why this is a throwback to then, because obviously since Season of the Haunted and Restoration ×2, that basically got nerfed into the ground, and Classy Restoration went away, and the only build that could benefit from Restoration ×2 post Season of the Haunted was, and still is, Solar Warlock with Heat Rises and Phoenix Dive. When you Phoenix Dive while Heat Rises is active, you get Restoration ×2. And it's only for like 2-3 seconds. So it's really not a long time, not enough to be like effective per se. But if you build into like extending Restoration with Ember of Empyrean, and I think Ember of Solace is the one that extends the timer as well. Yeah, Solace increases the duration of restoration. Empyrean extends the timer every time you get a solar kill. So the trick with Warlock was to Heat Rise, Phoenix Dive, kill within 3 seconds, and then now you've got restoration ×2 for like 8 seconds instead of 3 seconds or something like that. Well, now Titan can also play into Restoration ×2 in the same way that Warlock can with Strongholds, which is the exotic gauntlets that I'm using to solo Caiatl. Strongholds got a rework. I want to say when Lightfall released, it was either Season 21. Excuse me. It was either the release of Lightfall or it was Season 21 this season. But basically, now with Strongholds, when you block damage and then attack, you will get Restoration ×2. Now, like I was just actually watching my gameplay there because it seemed like that's what I was doing. I already had Restoration up, like Restoration ×1, so it doesn't seem to have worked. So it's possible that if you already have Restoration up, you can't turn it into Restoration ×2. That could be a thing. But usually at the start of the dungeon or of this encounter, like I'll just go in and immediately block damage with my sword, follow up with a light attack, and then that's going to give me restoration ×2 for 5 seconds. And then as long as I get a solar kill within that 5 seconds, then I will have restoration ×2 for basically for as long as I'm killing things every 8 seconds. So yeah, you can technically play this dungeon like it was on release in Season of the Haunted. Unfortunately, strongholds don't like increase your damage or your charge rate or anything like that, but they do give you max guard resistance, and also guarding with your sword doesn't decrease your sword energy. And so this is kind of a preview into next season as well, with the sword rework, because there was a huge update article that Bungie released a couple days ago stating that swords are getting a massive rework in general. They're going to basically make them more effective at blocking damage. They're going to give you more damage resistance while blocking, kind of similar to a glaive, and it's not going to decrease your sword energy as much. So and there's a whole bunch of other changes as well, but basically you can kind of get that feel for what swords are going to be like by using strongholds right now. Minus, of course, the fact that you're going to get restoration ×2 every time you block damage and follow up with an attack. So yeah, I thought it would be kind of fun. I'm using Lament here, which also, by the way, heals you as you do damage. So this is if you haven't soloed this dungeon or got your solo flawless emblem or whatever, this is not like a creative build per se. This is the build to solo the entire dungeon, quite frankly. If you just use this build for the whole thing, and like literally you don't have to change anything for any encounter, you can just use this build the whole time, and this will probably be the most effective way to solo the dungeon. But for Caiatl specifically, because your damage windows are so short between each bell, you basically have to prep for 3 damage phases of 10 seconds. And so using Lament on Solar Titan is just a very consistent way to do damage at each bell in the same way. So for example, like with your throwing hammer, you have infinite throwing hammers as long as you're picking them up, right? That means that at every single bell you can throw your hammer to get radiant, and then you have enough sword energy for all 3 bells, or sword ammo, so you can just, at each bell, you just throw your hammer, do your sword damage. If you try to do like something like a creative type build, well, I'm saying this because I was actually trying to do a no backup plans build, but the issue was you need an overshield at each bell to do consistent damage, and when you're solo, this is a problem. Never mind the fact that it's hard to like the hit registration on precision hits on Caiatl is a little bit tricky, and because you're dealing with like the halo of her head, because she has like an outline around her where she basically has like 2 figures, which can be a little bit disorienting. It makes it kind of hard to land your precision hits. But the main issue is if you're doing some creative build where you have to do a lot of things for each damage phase, it can be an issue to have all that available for each bell, and then you start to deal with like doing damage differently, like your rotation is a little bit different for each bell. And inconsistent gameplay like that can kind of screw you up, and it's an easy way to die or just do really bad damage or completely lose a damage phase. So if you just want a solo, a consistent solo 2-phase or 3-phase, I'm doing this in 2 phases. Like, look, I just did more than half of Caiatl's health with 1 phase, 3 bells. This is just a super easy way to do it. You don't even need your damage super. Like, you can literally just save your throwing hammer super for a as a panic super, like what I just did there. Or you could use it at the end of a damage phase when you have all the snipers shooting you in the Nightmare Realm, as Caiatl is like running away to the bell to escape. That's also a good time where you can pop your super, stand in the sunspot. Because keep in mind, there's no ads to go around and proc Restoration and Ember of Empyrean. You're just kind of standing there relying on like your healing grenade, your barricade, or you can just pop your super, like I said, stand in the sunspot, throw it at the snipers if you want, or just do a little bit of extra damage to Caiatl as she's running away. Mind you, it's not going to be great damage, but it is a little bit. And every little bit helps, especially when you're trying to solo 2-phase. If you do want to do this in 2 phases, you're going to have to get your combos on Lament pretty much perfect. So like for the first damage phase there, you saw that I throw my hammer to get radiant right away, and then I rev my sword by blocking, and then I do 4 or 5 light revved swings followed up by a heavy. That's going to completely drain my sword energy. And then I do 2 uncharged light attacks to rebuild my sword energy, like give it time to rebuild the energy. And in the time it takes to do 2 uncharged attacks or swings, you'll have enough sword energy to do another 2-1 combo. So then you can block again to rev up Banshee's Wail, do 2 light attacks, 1 heavy, and then 2 uncharged, and then 2 light, 1 heavy. So basically you're excuse me. So basically you're doing a I want to be safe, I would say a 4-1-2, and then a 2-1-2 and a 2-1-2. And you actually have enough time to do all those 3 series of combos at each bell. And if you could do that, you're going to do a lot of damage, because the heavy swing is the one that does the most damage. So landing that final heavy swing when the timer is at 0 is actually, it's key, right? So here I am on the last damage phase. I am using sniper damage resistance, because the snipers, I find, like Restoration is enough to clear ads and stuff like that, especially Restoration ×2, but the snipers can be an issue, especially if you're already low on health and one hits you, and then you're pretty much dead. So I prefer running sniper resistance for this encounter. Other than that, there's no loadout swaps here. No hot swappy loadouts, because the subclass is so strong with Restoration ×1 and ×2 available to you. You can just run triple Solar Surge mods on your legs, double time dilation, clutch on that healing grenade if you really need it. I have Font of Vigor, so I actually have 100 strength at all times as long as I have armor charge. Impact Induction to get me grenade energy on melee kills. Heavy-handed to make Orbs of Power on every melee kill with either Roaring Flames or my throwing hammer. Harmonic Siphon if I need to use my weapon. My weapon of choice here was, outside of Lament, was Royal Executioner. I actually have 2 of these fusion rifles. But the one that I'm using here was specifically crafted for Bonk Titan, because it has Grave Robber and Swashbuckler. And Swashbuckler is 35% extra damage after getting a melee kill. So it's actually quite substantial. And then a sniper rifle with auto-loading holster reconstruction just to shoot the bells, basically, and never have to reload. So anyways, hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next season.